growing up. In any case, the point being, getting back to Moses and the problem of standing against the text. What are you going to do with Moses, Pharaoh's daughter, and giving him a Hebrew name? You know, it just shoots the whole thing up. But it doesn't matter. That's what people think happened. That's fine. So we know what people think happened, and we know what's in the text. So Freud went on from there, and he picked up theories that you now hear modern people speaking about all the time. If you go on, I heard a program the other night on, I don't know, it was the Discovery Channel, or may have been public television, National Geographic, looking at mummies' tombs and things. And so these guys were talking about the fact that Akhenaten was something revolutionary and that maybe he influenced Moses. That's been known for almost 100, 200 years now, that there was a heretic Egyptian pharaoh around this time before Ramesses called Akhenaten. And he's called Akhenaten because originally he was, he changed his name because he began to worship this thing. I think he was called Amenhotep. And when he had his reform, I think he was Amenhotep IV, I'm not sure exactly. Amun is the ram god that they used to always worship at all the shrines in Egypt. And when he canceled that ram god out, and all their priests as well, you see he's like a Moses character right there. And he took the name, I think brother or son or something of Aton, the new god that he was going to say. It was a sun god is what it was. And he said there was only one god. And it was only, and he changed the capital. He moved it to a new place, to a city called Amarna, away from Thebes and Karnak, which is where it used to be, which is, you see those programs, that's where all those great structures are and tombs that they look at. It's about 100 miles or so, 200 miles north of this. And, you know, not near where Cairo is, which is further north, but not as far away from Cairo as Thebes and Karnak and those places, to further south. And by the way, these cities they mentioned are even further north yet. Again, I'm not a great, I'm not so great, but I think Cairo is here. Amarna would be here. And Thebes and so on would be, Thebes is on one side of the river, or on an island, and Karnak, or vice versa, is on the other. It's where the old capital was. And then down here is where the cataracts of the Nile, at the beginning of the Sudan. And up here is where these cities that they mentioned here, up in the Delta. Here's the Delta. That's basically the layout, if you want to call it. So he moved this capital to Amarna. There was nothing there. He built the whole city for himself, and the ruins are there because it only survived for 30 or 40 years, and then it became deserted. And he was overthrown, or he died under mysterious circumstances. We don't know anything about that. While he was king, he wiped away all of the inscriptions, and that's what they used to do. They used to rub people out. If they didn't like it, they'd take their inscriptions and just chisel them out. It's like you taking a sign down that you don't like, you know. They would just chisel and cross them out like that. So we find places that his name then is crossed out by his enemies. Then he crossed out his opponent's names from their monuments. In any case, everyone knew these ideas at Akhenaten, and it's in Freud. Freud said that Moses was one of Akhenaten's associates who, when Akhenaten's reforms failed, he took the children of Israel out of, he took the slaves or whatever it was, or refugees or whoever, and went out with them in this chaotic situation. And that made a lot of sense. So that's a good book on that basis. The rest of the book is horrendously stupid. They say, how can you stand and say Freud is stupid? It's possible to do if you have a brain. You can say anyone is stupid if you think you can do it in a higher level than that person. There's no reason why you shouldn't. You shouldn't just dismiss people as stupid without looking at what they say and then try to analyze it. But like like I'm giving you what I think are the virtues as far as the defects. So Freud is not a genius, he's a coke addict, and he's a cokehead, but he's got some good insights. He also made everyone insane with this couch thing that really, most times doesn't go anywhere, except become self-indulgent sort of process that people go through and think that they're achieving something that doesn't necessarily achieve anything. But I'm not sure most things, chemical things, are not much better. So I mean, I'm not going to say one's better than the other, but this guy is not a genius. Einstein, yeah, certainly Einstein, E equals mc squared. That is something incredibly beyond most people's powers. In any case, the beginning of Muslim monotheism, he's an old man, he's in England, and of course he's dealing with the Nazi problem, and he's had to flee Austria, and that book is interesting as far as his attempt to wrestle with his own culture, Jewish culture, which he always ignored. So he was forced to wrestle with his own culture, and that's what he did with it. It's worth reading. It is worth reading. At least the beginning is. And the idea he presents that Moses was an Egyptian, I think, makes a lot of sense in this context. And in the context of the Ignat and Reformation. Otherwise, it's hard to understand what really did happen here. It really is hard to understand what really did happen here.
But Akhenaten wasn't one of the Hyksos, right?
No, he wasn't. He was later. But that's a king of, I mean, it doesn't mean that they couldn't have come down under the Hyksos and been slaves under the period of Ignat. That's another story. I mean, he was not one of the Hyksos. He was after the Hyksos were overthrown. It'll be about maybe 250 years later. Yeah, the Hebrew slaves could have been the remnant of the Hyksos and others they had brought in. You follow me? The Semitic Hebrew slaves. That doesn't mean there's 600,000. Numbers tend to get exaggerated in ancient times. Zeros are often added to numbers. That's the best I can do for you. The rest you'll have to find out yourself, okay? Because we have to keep moving, and I just wanted you to know that those are some of the things to think about. Hebrew, as I told you, most scholars think comes from this word hapiru and habiru, which are these outlaw sort of intermediary groups of people between Iraq and Egypt, Mesopotamia and Egypt, who are good times they're tradesmen, caravanners, bad times they're outlaw bandits. That's pretty normal, and they just don't have any affiliation. So they can coalesce. Maybe we see gypsies as just gypsies, but gypsies know all their tribes and